We're so incredibly delighted to be here with all of you and to be able to be with Shakti Butler. She does beautiful documentaries, and in addition is a facilitator of exactly these kinds of conversations. Her work is heartwarming, it's open-hearted, it invites the spiritual, it transcends, it both transcends any particular group and allows groups to have a deep sense of mattering and belonging. So we are incredibly honored to have Shakti Butler be our host for our book launch today.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Roxy. Thank you, Ale. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, welcome. I'm so glad that you're here. There are a few people whose faces I recognize, so I'm going to give a warm hug to everyone, and a little special to the people that I know. So we are going to begin by, well, I want to explain something to you first. We're going to be doing a land acknowledgement combined as part of a conocimiento. So I thought I would describe what conocimiento is. Conocimiento comes from the farm workers movement, and it speaks to the underlying need for unity and strength in order to make change. And in order to know what your strengths are and to share them with others, we all have to do some work to be clear about what that means. And so I'll be asking you to take some notes. There'll be some questions at the end of the conocimiento. But why don't we begin just by putting your feet flat on the floor? It's the end of the day. Everybody's had a long day, I'm sure. And just sit up nice and straight so that your lungs can receive air, that your spinal column has those spaces in between the vertebrae that you are aware of, and take a few deep breaths. You can exhale first. Breathe in deep. Hold your breath for a count of 3, and then let go. Do it again. Deep breath in. Hold your breath for a few moments, and then let go of the day. Last time, at your own pace. Thank you so much. So I am here on Ohlone land, and I want to invite you to listen to this land acknowledgement with your whole being, with your mind, with your body and your spirit, and pay attention to what's going on with your body. Listen carefully. This land acknowledgement is adapted from the Native American Student Development Center of the UC Berkeley Division of Equity and Inclusion. We begin our time together by offering a land acknowledgement because it's a statement that pays respect to the indigenous people who are the original stewards of the land that we are on, referred to as the United States of America. It is only the first and barest step in what we can do to consciously support indigenous people today. This land was, and it continues to be, of great importance to the familiar descendants of those who have been its stewards for at least 20,000 years. The Ohlone peoples who are alive and flourishing members of today's Bay Area communities are here. This land has witnessed the Ohlone being discovered, exterminated, colonized, and then made invisible. The land has been witness to the joy, the love, the ingenuity of the community, and the pain of the original people. The land has also witnessed the rise of the colonizer, who over centuries repeated the pattern of taking, using and then discarding natural and human resources once they no longer served a purpose. And yet, the land reseeds itself. Where there was fire or drought or mudslide, there is always new life. This is the essence of nature, whose life force is always leaning towards renewal, toward healing, and accepts the end of life, which gives rise to new life. After trauma, there is new life in the ground. There is new life in the trees. There is new life in the water. This is the essence of nature, whose life force is always leaning towards renewal, toward healing, and accepts the end of life, which then gives rise to new life. Remember the seeds that we plant today for justice, for community, for liberation, and for healing. This must be tended, guarded, nurtured, and shared, and will show fruit in its own time, not ours. So take a few deep breaths, 3 as we did at the beginning. Notice how you feel and ask yourself, why am I here? What is your heart longing for? And jot down a sentence or two that answers that question for you. I have 2 questions for you. You can do one or the other or both, and you'll just have a couple of minutes to do this. What does respect mean to you, and how do you put its meaning into action? What does respect mean to you, and how do you put its meaning into action? And the second question is, what seeds are you planting for justice and healing? How do you do that internally and externally? So yes, I'm asking you these questions because you're not just recipients of what is going on here today. You are part of community, maybe many communities. And we want to be better. We want to learn. We want to grow. I just told you why I'm here. You may have your own reasons. So I'm going to begin by sharing with you a story. And first, let me thank you for participating in the conocimiento and writing down a few notes that you might find useful when you're in your groups. When I was 8 years old, I had a dear friend, and we used to get Ebony magazine at my house, and she used to get Jet magazine at her house. We both lived in Harlem. and our parents were friends. And whenever the new magazine came out, no matter which one it was, we were always excited to go to the other person's house and see it. And this particular day, we went to my friend's house and I grabbed the Jet magazine that I saw lying on the table and I opened it up to Emmett Till's body. My eyes couldn't really take in what I was seeing, but it landed. And when it did, I fell to the floor, sobbing. There's a part of me on the inside that's still sobbing. I still remember the impact and wanting to know and not being able to understand at all how anybody could do this to anybody else, much less a child. My love for Sarah and Roxy's work touches that little child, allows her to breathe and to take that in with love and accountability. Not an easy thing to do. Very hard. And so I support this work because it allows us to expand how we love, how we heal, how we engage in calling for justice, and how we hold ourselves and others accountable for that work. And because we need hope for the world to be more humanized. We have to show that we care, that we are interdependent, and we need to make these connections so that we can recognize the underlying unity of spirit, which holds everything in its grasp. So what does it mean to talk about peace and how our brain impacts how we behave? How can we learn to utilize emotions like shame and grief, love, anger, and hope when we talk to ourselves? And we can have some of this understanding through neurobiology and understanding by building and promoting what it means to live in communities of belonging. So note for yourself at this point in your paper, why is this work important for you? And you may want to refer to what you wrote about, the reasons why you're here. But why is this work important to you? What does it mean to you? And again, it does come back to, why are you here? What is your heart longing for? So take a moment to make a few notes here for yourself. Sometimes they don't have to be sentences. They can just be words that pop into your head, but allow yourself to be open to receive them. So take a moment as you do this. Maybe even close your eyes again. Maybe you do some deep breathing for yourself again. What is one story or an experience that you're carrying inside you that you know must be addressed in order for you to heal? And you can write that in your paper, your journal, if you call it that, or you may want to put something in the chat box that speaks to this story that comes up for you. So although no one has put anything in the chat yet, I see you writing on your own paper. You may want to put something that you'd like to share, no matter when it pops up. It could be while you listen to Roxy, who's going to be reading us a story now from her book, Beloved Community, talking about beloved community. Roxy.
Thank you, Shakti. And first, I want to say I'm so appreciating the context that you shared that helps ground the importance of this work. It's not just about us kind of being nice to each other, but it's about looking at these kinds of harms that have been done over and over and finding ways to address it, to fight against it, to get to know each other and to heal. So thank you for bringing us in this way. And so for everyone who's here, both folks on the call, so delighted to be here with y'all, and the folks who are watching on Facebook, I'm going to be reading from chapter 3 in How to Have Antiracist Conversations. And this is a story from a few years back when my kids were little. So after whirlwind mornings, getting 3 kids dressed and fed, finding lost items, navigating rush hour traffic, the quiet half hour following drop-off was my cherished time. I often sat in my car with coffee, listening to whatever discussion was happening on NPR. And this particular morning, I had parked outside a neighborhood coffee shop, waiting for a break in the engrossing story so I could run in to pick up my coffee. And as I listened, I saw an elderly woman inside the cafe walking towards the door, each hand full. I jumped out of the car to open the door. And as she exited the coffee shop, she looked down and saw a banana peel on the ground nearby. Instead of thanking me for opening the door, she glared at me and said, "You people always make such messes. Why can't you put your garbage in the garbage can?" Stunned and angry, I had a split second to decide. How should I respond? Should I say anything to her? That time, at that moment, I responded angrily, "This isn't my garbage. What do you mean when you say you people? Do you think because I'm Black I had to be eating a banana like a monkey? Why would you even assume it's my garbage?" As you might imagine, she didn't respond to my questions, instead walking off with a huff. And I was okay with that. In hindsight, I realized I had not really wanted to engage with her. I spoke up in that moment, driven by my desire to be seen, to acknowledge, even if just to myself, that racist assumptions were at play here, in protest against the many moments of violence I encountered throughout my days in that community. My expression accomplished all of that for me, but a core need remained unmet. Both my silence and my angry response in the face of microaggressions had one thing in common. Neither were effective in creating the world I so desperately longed for. One in which my children, all children, could grow up knowing that they were fully accepted and that their full humanity and gifts would be seen and nurtured. Instead, my responses demonstrated the tension between positive peace and negative peace Dr. King discussed in 1956. The woman's angry expression and my frustrated retort and response, both making visible the racial tension in our interaction, would not be judged as peaceful by most folks. She and I likely each left with a sense that we were not seen for who we are, with a story that the other had acted violently. I know I did not view this woman as a valued member of my community, and I doubt she saw me in that way. Some people would tell me I could have stayed silent, walked away, given her the benefit of the doubt. That, however, would be settling for negative peace. The seeming absence of tension and conflict and a sense of personal safety. I still would have been impacted by the stereotypes that I perceived in her assumptions. But by staying silent and turning away, I could maintain the fiction for both of us that there was no tension or violence happening. This kind of peace does not create change. Dr. King spoke to this when he said, "I come not to bring this peace of escapism, this peace that fails to confront the real issues of life, the peace that makes for stagnant complacency. Peace is not merely the absence of some negative force, war, tension, confusion, but it is the presence of some positive force, justice, goodwill, the power of the kingdom of God. I don't want to settle for negative peace, silence and acceptance in the face of harm and suffering. Instead, in order to build beloved community, we must work to create a peace that is built on justice, on care, on truly working to attend to the needs of all things, all beings. The positive peace on which beloved community is built requires not our silence, but our action. It depends on us to speak up, to interrupt, to name and address harm when we encounter it. And it requires us to become vocal, to welcome the inevitable tension, discomfort, and even pain. It demands of us that we work to change the structures and engage in the necessary dialogue for as long as it takes to create a system built on equity and justice for all that does not continue to result in some folks experiencing violence in any of its forms.
Thank you, Roxy. Thank you.
Thank you, Shakti.
Right. You can all give Roxy a silent thank you. I mean, take a moment and make it real. Yeah. So what Roxy has described is the journey of transformative learning and change. So let me say a word about transformation in that way. Transformative learning is unearthing the embedded assumptions that we have about how we think the world works. Being able to look deeply into who we are and move into more of an alignment between what our hearts long for and the behavior that we exhibit on a daily basis. It requires constant interaction with ourselves and other, deep self-inquiry of ourselves and others. So thank you again, Roxy. I love that story. So given what you've heard about this need to transform, to engage in transformative learning, take a moment to journal about a story of yours that needs attention. I asked you to choose one just a little bit earlier. And how would you benefit from the content that this book offers if you were able to address that story, something that's still there deep inside you, that when it shows its head, it's still filled with life? So take 3 minutes, maybe 2, and write something about this, a story that you remember that needs attention, that would benefit from the content of this book. If you're still writing, go ahead and finish up what you are writing. You should have enough to take with you into your triad groups, which is where you'll be going next. So welcome back, everybody. We'd like to take just a few minutes to share, if you would like to share something that happened for you that allows you to express how it is to be in a group, even for a short period of time, and connect with people in that group, what that does for you and how that's related to the importance of this work. And also, please, if you'd like to put just a few words into the chat so we can hear from everybody what this experience was like for you. How do you benefit from engaging with other people and doing some of this work? I see Joy. Thank you. If you want to speak, please raise your hand. You know where the raise hand button is, or you can just raise your physical hand if you don't know that. I'm good at calling on people too, just in case. I think I'll let you know that.
And there are a lot of new things in the chat too.
A lot of new things, yes. Enjoy the shared mindset, connection, humanity in the circle rises up, ready to encounter one another honestly, confidence, community. The breakthrough rooms give me clarity on why I'm here. Nancy, can you say a little bit more about that?
Sure. There was a poll of wanting to join this, and I didn't know why. By sharing, it gave me more clarity, which is that I have been wanting to address this issue of inequity in my own way, but I did not know how.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
And so I'm hoping like to learn some skills. And also I feel like what the questions you asked are very deep, and those are internal questions that you really have to ask your soul, your body and your soul to answer.
Yes.
And the story that Roxy told was really something that I hope eventually I gain that reflex of able to
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah,
Thank you so much. Thank you. So my eyes just fell on honesty. Truth is medicine. Yes, it is medicine. Thank you for that, Lydia. And that this work is so necessary if we're going to, as Louise said, find authenticity. And Cassidy said, it gives me hope to be in a space where racial tensions and challenges can be named and shared, vision to grow, and empower ourselves towards positive change. Gives me hope that we can be in that space. So thank you so much, everybody. I think you are receiving a flavor of some of the content of what's in the books that Roxy and Sarah have written, both together and apart. And let us listen to them. I'd like to, with your permission, Roxy and Sarah, ask you to tell us a little bit about the process that you have undergone in writing these books, and maybe even a little bit about what drove you to write the books in the first place.
Mm-hmm. So
go first. Roxy's going first. Okay.
yeah, I'll start a little bit. I think the part that I'm still marveling about when I think about writing these books was how much I was clear I was never going to write a book. If you read the book, you'll understand a bit of my trauma in relationship to writing and why that was so hard for me. And so one of the things that was really important to me, and this process was so healing, was that I would never have written the book if Sarah had not been willing to show up, to continue to encourage, to nag me, to say, you can do this, I believe in you, this is possible. And then to have our whole community come together and say, we want these books. We're going to let the publishers know that we want these books. We're going to support them. It was magical. And it actually gave me back trust in my voice, trust that I actually could contribute something that was meaningful.
Mm-hmm. So Roxy, just say a few more words about what you learned about yourself in the process of reviewing your life, because your book is filled with so many stories that are just so amazing, much like what we just heard from you earlier. But what did you gain from being able to gather this with Sarah's support?
Yes, what I got was a really deep sense of interdependence that, I've always known this work was important, but I think I was part of this idea that you've got to do it on your own. Each person has to, pull themselves up by their bootstraps. We have to rage against the machine, but we're doing it alone. And writing the book helped me both have support in looking at the places where I needed to do my healing and to recognize that we are all wounded by white supremacy. We all carry the scars, and that the healing would not happen on its own. So it was not just Sarah supporting me and saying, yes, you can do this, you can show up, you can take forever to write a chapter and not meet deadlines, but it was also my community. I had a group of friends who devoted countless hours in just listening to me, empathizing with me, giving me space to grieve, to express my uncertainties, and then also to say, we love what you're saying, just tell us about this chapter. And then in the act of talking, in the act of being received, I was able to write it. So it's the power of community, and that's what's necessary. That's both what we're building, but what's necessary in order to build community is the sense of interdependence.
Yes, beautiful. Thank you so much. Sarah?
Well, I got to write my first book exactly in the same way. There was a sweet group of friends who got together and said, you need to write a book. And I was like, I can't write a book. And then they did this same thing of meeting with me and capturing my ideas. And then after a year, they said, we're done. You're on your own now. I was like, okay, it was sort of like having people push my little bicycle along, and I started to pedal and pedal. But there's something about there's something here that is definitely connected to voices, and voices that don't get to be heard. I have never heard Roxy say, I was never going to write a book. I never heard her say that before. When I would say to her, you have to write a book, she wouldn't say, I will never write a book, Sarah. I might have given up if she'd said that out of respect and concern. But for so many years, I had the pleasure of working in Roxy's circles and seeing her, the clarity of her thought, and being with the way that she took nonviolent communication and created a community space in which it could be observations, feelings, needs, requests could be considered systemically. In my experience, Roxy's work is highly innovative. It takes something that Marshall kind of created a foundation, but then it begins to think about it through this lens of like, how the heck do we work with this not just on a personal level, but how do we talk about systems? How do we change systems? How do we make observations more complex? So, God, I'm just so grateful that I never knew that Roxy was inside of herself saying, I will never write a book, because I was like, we've got to have this. And my own experience is of being, is of being a non-college, I mean, I had a college education, but not in neuroscience, didn't have a master's, didn't have a PhD. And so, I had to write my book because people wanted it. So I wanted Roxy to know that her book was wanted. It brings tears to my eyes because that's what helped me to be able to do what I've done. So I'm just so grateful. I'm so grateful that we're all sitting here. I cannot tell you, I have goosebumps, and I love each and every one of you for showing up for us. And also just so much acknowledgement and care for the folks who spent hours and hours and hours, Ranji and David and Gwen and Roger and Edwin, and it's just like there's, and Alicia and Ali, just, I haven't named everyone, but I'm so grateful because we don't have to lose Roxy's voice, God damn it. It's down on paper.
I want to invite all of you that are listening, that if you had questions that you had an opportunity to ask Roxy and Sarah, that you know what they are, because we will have time in the end to have some Q&A. And I want to be sure that we use the time well. But in the meantime, since I'm kind of holding the mic, so to speak, I get to ask you one more question. So my question for you is this. So often in the work of social justice that I've been doing for 30 years, I've heard the question like, so there's the inside work that needs to be done, and there's the outside work that needs to be done. Some people believing that one or the other is more important, and of course they're both important. But my question to you is this: how, when we concentrate on what it means to do the interchange, to find our voices, to find our courage, to learn how to love ourselves and others, to understand that we are interdependent, how do you, in your vision, understand how that impacts structure?
Oh, I love this question. I love this question. For me, it's the recognition that they go hand in hand, that I see a lot of times people are working on changing structures, and that's necessary. I need the people, the lawyers out there who are working to change laws, the people who are coming up with new policies. We need these folks to be doing what they do. And at the same time, we need to make sure that we're not creating new structures that are actually just replications of the same pattern of inequities, right? That somebody's got theirs and somebody else doesn't. And the inner work that we're doing actually gives us the capacity to envision new structures, structures where we can all thrive, and it can start to infuse what we see as possible and what we're working towards when we start to realize we're working for beloved community, not just for, as a Black person, that I'm going to be okay, that Black folks are going to be okay, but I'm working for everyone to be okay, not one group or the other group, but everyone. And so that inner work, like it's almost like writing my book is an example of this, right? If you can think of my book as a structure, I wasn't able to write that book until I did the inner work, until I had the support that would enable me to step up in this very public way. And so we need that also. We need people to do the inner work so they can step forward and show up and be effective at creating the world that we really want, not just a world that's attending to some harm, but not going for that big vision.
Right. Thank you so much. What a beautiful answer. Sarah, I know that you are going to take us through an exercise, but is there anything you want to say about this before we move on?
I'm so interested in the ways that we fall down when we're trying to move forward. I'm so interested in those moments where we become exhausted, or we become too ashamed, or we get too worried that we're just going to do something wrong, so we stop. I'm really interested in what needs to happen inside so that we can keep going, so that we can pick ourselves up, so that we can move forward. So, because I think because I have such a tender heart for everybody who wants this work, everybody who wants it and gets a little worried about whether or not their voice matters and whether or not they should really be contributing and whether or not they'll do harm if they contribute. So in terms of structure, it's almost like I see that people's inner structure gets collapsed. And then how do we support it so that they're up and running again, so that we get to be up and moving again? That's how your question landed for me.
Yeah, I just want to say how much I love that understanding. Often I think when people think of structures, they only think of structures on the outside, but we also have inner structures. And this direct relationship between who we are internally and what the external world is like when all of that is collectivized is what we live in. So thank you so much for that. I appreciate you both. So now we have the pleasure of being able to have Sarah talk us through what makes us angry and what do I do? What do I love slide?
Oh, yeah.
From the Antiracist Heart.
And this is the second book. So Roxy read from the first book, the Roxy book. And then this is the Roxy and Sarah book, the Antiracist Heart. And one of the we're going to play with one of the exercises that's in this book about life-serving rage. In my childhood, feeling angry was always something I had to apologize for. If I ever became angry, I was sent to my room and had to stay there until I wrote a letter of apology for hurting my mother's feelings. Even as an adult, I used to feel that anger was the worst thing I could possibly feel. It led both to an absolute loss of connection and then an absolute loss of self-respect. When I discovered that everyone has anger circuits and that our anger circuits are integral to the flow of our life energy, I had a lot of work to do to inform my nervous system that there could be a purpose for anger other than humiliation and disconnection, that there could be a rage that was life-serving and connected me even more deeply to love. As I worked with my rage and care circuits, I began to understand that we need our life-serving rage linked with love, to change the world. To get a little closer to the idea of life-serving rage, we often have to spend some time acknowledging our own histories with other people's anger and how they scared us with it.
Oh, yeah.
It may also be that we have scared our own selves or our parents or our siblings with our anger, or that they have scared us with their anger. We can acknowledge all of this. So we're going to have you take a look at a questionnaire, which is an opportunity for you to begin to link your anger, which you can tentatively claim if you have not claimed it before, knowing that it is life-serving, especially when we link it with love, an opportunity to link your anger with the true roots of what makes you angry, your love. So what we're going to do, let me just take a quick, oh good, I'm perfect. What we're going to do is we're going to look at this slide that Roxy has prepared. And you can see on the left, there's what makes me angry. And on the right column, there's what do I love? So here are some of the things that might make you angry, that make me angry. Gerrymandering, banning education about enslavement, refusal to look at systemic racism, name-calling and racial slurs, ignoring, denying, or refusing to learn about microaggressions, blaming society's problems on groups of people, and of course, there's another one I want to add today that's not on this list that comes from this experience of tragedy that just happened in Jacksonville, where three Black people were shot by a white man who had been, as so many people are being now, drawn into his anger and his disgust in a way that was wrong, where he ended up killing people. This is something I'm very angry about, not just blaming society's problems on groups of people, but today I have anger at politicians who mobilize racial hatred in order to have more political power. I am livid. So then the question is, what do I love that makes me livid? In this case, there's lots of what do I loves that you'll get to play with here, but you also can go off the beaten path and figure out what it is that's really touching you. So in this moment, it is like the sacredness of life. There's a love for the sacredness of every life, and for those three people. There's an intense love for those three people, for their lives, for their voices, for their contributions, for their families, for their love. There's so much love in me for them, and there's so much fury, and they're linked. If this makes any sense, they're linked. So you'll get to choose what makes you angry. You may be needing a little help with Jacksonville yourselves. And you get to say, how does your body feel when you think about what makes you angry? And then you can name that, because that really helps too. And then connect whichever items are important to you from the first column to what you love in the second column, or what you find that you love that's not written in the second column. How does your body feel when you notice what you love, and what beautiful values are at the root of your anger? And then you get to share with your pair. You get to share with your pair the deep love that lies beneath your anger. And if some of the words are not familiar to you, don't worry about them. Just go to the other words. And for this time, you don't think about somebody else. I noticed in the chat there's a beautiful question about what's happening with the person who did the violence. Don't think about that right now. Stay with yourself. See if you can find your own anger and your own love, and see how that feels, because it's extraordinary to begin. It's extraordinarily mobilizing to begin to create a link between these two. Now, Roxy, it looks like we're going to put people in for 6 minutes into pairs.
First of all, welcome back. Thank you for coming back. And you were talking about the deep love that can lie underneath extreme emotions, rage in this case, anger, but it can also be, of course, other things. And I want to combine this with your opportunity to talk to our two amazing authors here. So perhaps you can think of some place where you want to ask a question that will help you understand your own process like what you just explored together with another person. And you might have something that you'd like to ask Roxy or Sarah related to where you want to grow, where you need more understanding. That's the purpose of this work. So don't be shy because we don't have a lot of time. Others of you may want to write something in the chat.
Shakti, I see one question in the Q&A.
Oh, okay. Should I do the Q&A thing now?
We can do both.
Roxy?
Why kind of combine them?
When do you leave if harm continues or silence is required? Why did you stay in nonviolent communication when experiences there can be so harmful? And that question is directed to you, Roxy.
Sure. So I love this question. I want to kind of pull back first and not yet speak to the NVC question. One of the things I always tell folks, especially folks of the global majority who experience harm, is that you get to leave. You get to decide, what do I have the capacity and the willingness to take on? There is never a demand that in order to be, I don't know, a good warrior, that you have to take on more than you can bear, more than a cost that will be too much for your family. So you get to choose, you get to look inside of yourself and say, what are all of my needs? What are the needs around combating this injustice? But also, it might be, what are the needs for sustainability? Do I need this job to feed my family, right? Do I need to be in a relationship with this person to get my degree? Like, so many different reasons why you might choose to stay where you're experiencing harm, or you might choose to not confront it directly. So it's always around deciding, what's the cost for you for leaving and what's the cost for you for staying, and really understanding your needs. If you have to stay in a setting when you're experiencing harm, and some of us do, then I would say get support. Don't do it alone. You are not alone. Find people who you could go to and rage and cry and scream and do everything you need to do so that those emotions don't build up inside of you. But I just want to really acknowledge that sometimes we need to stay for some other really important needs. And why did I stay in the nonviolent communication community when some of the experiences around, like even the things like questioning whether or not privilege is real, right? Why did I stay? Because I saw the power of nonviolent communication, that it is part of my nonviolent communication is what helps me move towards beloved community. It's what helps me look at somebody who is doing incredibly harmful things and still see them as a human, still see them as somebody that I could both say, stop, this is not working for me, and I need to help you figure out how to do something different. So I can do both. And that was really important to me.
Thank you. Thank you, Roxy. Luciana, you have your hand up.
Thanks, Shakti. Maybe you can approach this question, Roxy. Since you brought the word stay, I would love to see if I can find a way for people to stay and sustain a conversation around racism, because what I feel it's really challenging as some people kind of escape in different ways. And I would love to have a kind of a conversation that would make them stay and sustain the discomfort or the pain or whatever. There are many reasons. Do you have a quick recipe? Or maybe it's reading book. I would love a quick
I wish I had the magic wand where I could just be like, ding, you're going to say, and you're going to learn how to sit with your discomfort. And I don't have a quick recipe, but that's exactly why Sarah and I wrote the Antiracist Heart. So we could start to equip people with the tools of noticing, when am I fleeing discomfort? When am I not able to stay in the fire? And to realize that there are things that they could learn that will help them get stronger, help them build capacity to do that. So that's one quick answer. And then the other answer is, another part of it is around our willingness. Like for me as a person of the global majority, my willingness to keep persisting in bringing this conversation to you, even when you're signaling to me that you don't want to hear it anymore, right? So it's my willingness to just say, yeah, I get it. I get you're uncomfortable, but we're still talking about this. And so there's so many directions that we can work on how to build the capacity in our communities to do it. Sarah, do you want to add anything to this one?
Well, there's this, I think, comes through in so much of what you write, and in the forms of that you offer for like how to have dialogues. Some of the nuts and bolts of it are like, how much time do you want to spend talking about this? Like, will you talk to me for 5 minutes about this? You know, giving people also, Roxy has a number of different needs that different types of conversations meet. And that helps people to stay in, to say, I really, and then the other added thing that Roxy does so often is to let people know that they matter. To be able to say, you know, if you are trying to have a conversation with me, for you to say, Sarah, I want to have a conversation about racism with you and about something I've noticed that you said that did not land well for me. And I want to have this conversation because I really care about our connection. And it's important to me. And this is part of that fierceness that Roxy brings. It's important to me, and part of the, you know, positive piece instead of negative piece. Yeah. How am I doing, Roxy?
Great. And I know it's like we can keep riffing on this for a long time, but I know there's so many other questions. So I'm going to turn it over to Shakti.
Thank you.
So, and I'm going to turn it over to all of you because, you know, think about the places where you get stuck. I mean, this is not my place to ask questions, but I have many of them about places where I get stuck. And how do I bring into alignment, you know, who I want to be as a human being and where I may fall short of that because of all the feelings that I have. So where are you? What do you need? What would help you grow into how you want to show up in difficult situations, both for yourself and for others?
I see a question in the chat that says, it's not in the Q&A, it's actually in the chat, and it says, how would you handle the situation that I read about earlier?
Great.
Yeah, I'll answer that one really quickly. And I honestly think that it really depends, right? If I had a lot of spaciousness, I might actually engage with the person, but almost 99% of the chance, this was a random woman that I was opening a door for, I would walk away, because it's also around what's sustainable for my energy. And do I want to have this conversation with a random person I'm never going to see again, who's actually not going to be part of my community, not part of what I'm trying to build. So chances are I would just walk away. But I can imagine a day when I was just feeling lots of spaciousness and wanted to have a conversation with her about it. And then I might actually ask what I asked at the end, what made you think this was my banana peel? And then see what she said.
So, yes. Go ahead, Sarah.
Ali noticed that there was a question for me from a Facebook live stream.
Okay.
Ali, do you want to read it aloud, or do you want me to?
Sure, Sarah, I can read it out loud. When I think about these things, I become aware of their needs earlier than I hear my own anger. Then the power of anger is reduced by half. I have noticed that as soon as I acknowledge the other person, I am convinced and tend to act complicit. Is there anything that might help me to connect more deeply with my love?
What a gorgeous question, and there's so much self-awareness in it. I love these words, I am convinced and tend to act complicit. Well, first of all, I want to name what we do here. And we do it so often to try to manage our distress. And we're taught to do it in nonviolent communication a lot, like what's happening with the other person, rather than staying with us. So there's, in a way, a nervous system agreement that we make to go to try to understand the other in order to be able to manage the immensity of our rage and our despair and distress about the way people behave. And it's semi-effective. It does exactly this thing that this wonderful person is writing about. The power of the anger is reduced by half. I think that's even actually backed up by neuroscience, that when we begin to turn our attention outward, we're already starting to dampen the truth of our own experience. So the question is, what are the words of this contract? Would it be, I, Sarah, solemnly swear to my essential self to immediately think about the other person's needs in order to be able to live in the same world with them, no matter the cost to myself? Or does it come from early childhood? For example, I, Sarah, solemnly swear that I will take into account my mother's needs and put them above my own in order to be able to live in peace with her. There are a number of different things that the contract could be connected with, different old traumas, different experiences of our needs not mattering. And as we begin to release these agreements that tell us that our needs and our feelings are less important than others, we start to begin to rest in our own experience. And our own experience is important because when we really feel it, we really get to know what we love. And when we really know what we love, and we know that we have outrage and fury and love, we've got a lot of juice to do things, to move in the world, to connect with people with love, to find compatriots for the struggle, and to do all the things that need to be done. So it's quite important not to leave ourselves. And I hope that since Ali can see the Facebook page and I cannot, I hope that person lets us know how that landed.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Sarah. And thank you, Roxy. I'm tempted to say, I know we need to move on. We have a few things that we need to do to bring this to a close, but there's one question here that I think leads us to that place. And the question is, how are you different for having completed the books? But I think the question also means, how will I be different if I read the books? So I think it answers both of those things. If each of you could just give us a short, pithy answer about how you're different for having completed the books.
Yeah. My short, pithy answer for both me and that I'm hoping would be true for any of the readers is that I feel more hope. I feel more capable. I feel more willingness to step into these difficult conversations because I realize that it's possible. I can do them. I can create change.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah.
And I have been transformed in some ways, utterly transformed by this work. This step that we've been working with just today, this movement into getting the connection between our rage and our love, and getting that sense of juice is just a really life-changing experience. So my hope would also be for the readers that they would get in touch with their own juice.
Yes, juice. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your knowledge, and for writing the books and sharing that with us as well. And I'm sure that those of you that are here would like to know how you can support this message or these messages for getting out into the world. And so this is really a call to action. And I think we have a slide for this. There are some ways that we can look at some of the ideas that have been put forth by other people who are also asking the same question, that you may see some of it sings to you and there are things that you would like to do. So let's see, I'm going to need to make my screen bigger so I can see this, but I also want to see something else. So here's what you're looking at, obviously, is, you can buy the books. There are some suggestions here. And I know earlier today that some people talked about how they would like to buy the books in bulk so that they can share them with friends. So there are some answers for that. You can leave a review now at the online bookstore or goodreads.com. You've received and read your books, and am I reading that right? This is kind of
if you've received and read your books, then go ahead and leave the review. So we don't want fake reviews. We want real reviews.
okay.
But,
all right.
yeah.
So these are some of the suggestions, but I would love to hear from some of you what you would like to do in regards to helping get this message out for yourself and for others that you love and care about. I didn't tell you all that I used to teach ninth grade, did I? So Louise, what would you like to do, if anything? I'm not trying to put you on the spot. We're just really trying to gather ideas as quickly as we can.
Yeah, I've been thinking about it. I like all the ideas that have already come down. I think maybe just personally talking to friends, odd friends, that aren't in some groups that I'm already in, about the book and about my experience, and inviting them to enjoy it.
Right.
With them.
Yes. Do any of you belong to book clubs? Does anybody here participate in book clubs? What is that like, Virginia, for you to read something with other people?
I love it.
Yeah.
What, I don't know how to answer that question.
Well, I guess, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I mean, there's a group at my local library, and we choose together what books we're going to read. And so everybody who wants to suggests books, and then we vote on them and choose them. And in the past couple of years, I've suggested, and the group has chosen to read, blocking on the name, but the most recent one is How to Be an Antiracist by Ibram Kendi.
Right.
So stand from the beginning.
And it's, it's a great way. It's an opportunity to encourage people to understand things and to speak up about things.
Right. So this is something that people can do here. There's some really good suggestions in the chat box. Someone belongs to an anti-racist church. Alyana, am I saying your name properly? Alyana, belonging to an anti-racist church and sharing the books with them, or asking your library to get copies of the books is somewhat that Gwen and Roger wrote. Sally Marie, contact the local groups or organizations that are in your circle of influence to see if they're interested. And there is a question that perhaps we can put in here just to clarify this for people, Roxy or Sarah, which is, how are the two books different and how do they cover different things?
The first book is all about the actual nuts and bolts of conversations. So you get to read Roxy's stories, you get to think about your own life experience, and you get to imagine trying out and learning the skills to try out these different conversations that have different intentions. And so there's a lot of clarity and storytelling and practice that comes in that book. And the second book, Antiracist Heart, is an exploration of why self-compassion is so important as we step into this arena with, again, neuroscience information, exercises, questionnaires, fun things to do to try to break it up and bring you into a place of exploration and ease and self-affection.
Thank you, Sarah. Roxy, did you want to say anything else here about that?
I think I would also add that in fact, in both books, we did a really great job of also giving some education about just some of the concepts connected to anti-racism, like unconscious bias or talking about violence. So it's like a little bit of a primer on some of these concepts before we dive into how to actually have the dialogues themselves. So you can read in depth about it in the first book, and then you get to practice and see your own relationship with each of the concepts in Antiracist Heart.
Nice. So are people checking out the chat? Can you just give me a nod of the head? Because I don't need to read what's in there, but there's some good ideas. Are you all seeing them?
Yeah,
Contacting bookstores in New Zealand and writing a review of the book. And it always helps when there's a review of the book that's written by people who didn't write the books, so that people actually see what they are receiving from actually engaging in this material. I love to talk about the books. I love to talk about, what I'm learning, what new questions I have, seeing how other people feel, so that we build community around the books, that people actually can learn from each other, a little bit like what we were trying to do here today. We have 1 minute left. Is there anything anybody else would like to say? How are you feeling?
I think I'll say a couple of quick things.
Okay.
One is, if you don't already have your copy, of course, go buy it. But then also, there's a giveaway happening right now on Goodreads. So you can enter that giveaway to get a free copy, to see if you win a free copy. And I would love it. It would be such a gift if, when this call ends, you go and click on that Goodreads link. And if you already have your book, leave a review, even if all you do is give a star rating, because it makes such a difference.
Okay. Thank you, Roxy. So lots of good ideas, everything from what are these books about, how would they impact my life, to what I can do to share this with others. I just sincerely want to thank all of you for being here, for spending your precious time engaging in what did you expect? I don't know, but how was it for you? And of course, our dearest, and I will speak on behalf of those of you who are not speaking right now, but to give my deepest respect, admiration, and gratitude to Roxy and Sarah for putting all of the hard work that they put into writing these books and sharing their stories and giving us tools for how we can help build beloved communities and heal our brains at the same time. So wishing you all a very beautiful rest of your evening, and we'll see you next time.
And thank you to those of you who put in questions in the chat that we didn't get a chance to answer.
Yeah.
We're so grateful for your questions.
Yes.
Go to Antiracist Conversation, or go to antiracistconversations.com and sign up to be able to be part of the podcast experience, and to be on the mailing list for future offerings that Roxy and I do together. Go to roxannemanning.com to sign up for all of Roxy's offerings and her amazing newsletter, which also is kind of like a little chapter of the book each time. Not the same things, but just like ongoing Roxy's thought about these issues that are really good to be able to be in the loop with.
Yes. And thank you to you, Ale, for all of your wonderful support as always. It's so helpful. So,
And
you guys don't want to go, huh? You want to stay a little longer? I have a few more questions.
Shakti, before we close, Shakti, thank you for being with us.
It's really a pleasure. Really a pleasure. Yes.
For your holding.
Thank you.
For your
Bye,
And the grounding.
everybody.
yeah.
Bye, everyone. You can unmute and say goodbye.
Bye. Thank you,
Bye. Love to
everyone.
all.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you so much. It was great.
Yeah.